Here's Donald Trump weighing in on policy on Newsmax with an interesting theory about how you can fund government. I don't know if he's coming out for MMT here or just simply say, like, I have a different way. We sell watches.
Blame always seems to go on her end to corporate price fixing and vilifying the corporations and the companies in this country. When asked how she's going to pay for the agenda last night on 60 Minutes, she just keeps saying she's going to tax the rich. Even Bill Whitaker on 60 Minutes is saying, well, we live in the real world. How are you really going to do that?
Well, you don't tax the rich because the rich are going to look. The rich pay most of the tax in the country. First of all, people hate to say it, they hate to hear it, but you take a certain very small percentage, and most of the tax is paid by the rich. But the problem that she has is she's going to the communist method. Take all incentive, and you know what the rich do and the corporations do? They leave the country and they go to another country that's more friendly from a tax standpoint and other standpoints like a regulation standpoint. Yeah. Her agenda will bring us in to a 1929 style depression, and it's guaranteed. She has no idea what
blame always.
He's so obsessed with the turn of the 20th century. He's been saying over and over that he's William McKinley, which, I think historians actually might agree in terms of his tariff proposal, but it also ushered in the Gilded Age, which also then led to the Great Depression.
Yeah, the very height of the Gilded Age, he's talking about.
I read the back of a book on early 20th century history, and I haven't gotten to that part yet. So I will be getting there.
He picked the least interesting candidate to have a spiritual connection with who was assassinated, or president. He could have been JFK or Abe Lincoln, but no, he's William McKinley.
It's because that's what he grew up thinking about. As a child, his parents would probably tell him, the Gilded Age was really great.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's essentially Mr. Magoo, but as a presidential candidate.
I just wanted to just address two of the things that he said here so that, just doing our due diligence. First off, it is the case that the rich pay more of the taxes in the country, but they do not pay commensurate with the amount of wealth they have. They control such an enormous amount of the country's wealth. And you go where the money is. And we should also say, just as a sheer numbers game, that's the reality of it. As for a fairness question, the people who have benefited the most from society, owe more to that society, B, have probably benefited more with a combination of luck and the fact that it's structured towards those people.
Yeah. How lucky is it that all these laws benefit me?
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, whether it was, sort of like vestiges of racism or ongoing racism for that matter. I mean, look, talk about housing, the number one way that intergenerational wealth builds. If you were black in this country, you couldn't get a mortgage. Even frankly, in the lead up to the financial crisis, and I would imagine now we can find evidence of it being more difficult for black people to get mortgages. But certainly it was literally the law to perfectly legal to deny certain cohorts of people mortgages and loans or charge higher rates, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of who you tax, of course you tax the rich. I happen to believe you don't need to use taxation to fund the government, but if we're operating in that world, taxing the rich is no problem. The other thing is that if you're worried about capital flight, then make laws to inhibit capital flight.
Yeah.
Because every one of those billionaires who decides I'm going to live in a better tax haven in wherever it is, I don't know, Dubai or
Canary
Lisbon
Islands.
or the Canary Islands or in Britain or wherever it is. I don't know where it's most favorable. You simply say, okay, well, incidentally, the homes you own here or the privileges that you're getting from being an American citizen, well, we're going to tax you on that. There are ways of inhibiting capital flight. Should we watch this Matt Walsh video since we're talking about taxation and we're talking about
Sure.
distribution to the rich? This is clip number 12 on Matt Walsh's Daily Wire show.
And did you notice something about the tax brackets?
Pause it. Can I just say one thing? Pause it. I always forget how fashy his new logo is. It really is super fashy.
I mean, honestly, when I look at it, it looks like it's a ski resort or something like that. Like, here, come to Vermont.
Actually, that does look like a pretty ski resort. Like, you can see the reflection of the mountains on the lake in front of it. It's like Lake Tahoe or something.
I know. I want to go there, but then I see Matt Walsh's creepy beard, and much less so.
Yeah, you run for the hills.
And did you notice something about the tax brackets? These rich people are not all billionaires. In fact, almost none of them are billionaires. There are only like 700 billionaires in the whole country. Billionaires are basically irrelevant. They barely exist. 700 in a country of 330 million people. You could confiscate all of their money, take all of it.
Let's do it.
You could put a tax rate of 100% on billionaires, and it would fund the government for like a week or something.
Cool.
Okay. I mean, the government spends $16 billion a day. Okay, a day. So you could take Elon Musk's entire net worth.
Pause it for a second. Again, I just want to say this talking point is deployed because they want to tie it. They want to say that they want to tie it into this notion of like, to fund the government. We have money to do things. We are sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Israel and Ukraine. You can argue that, one or the other is valid, or both are valid, or both are invalid. It doesn't matter. That money, like, we didn't have where did that money come from? We had the money to do these things. And so the game that they play is that, like, you could tax all the billionaires and it wouldn't fund the government for more than a couple of weeks.
It'd be great for the economy.
It would be great for the economy. There is absolutely no reason to have 700 kings, essentially, who operate at a completely different plane of existence, who have no notion of necessities or needs, or operate with political impunity because of all this money. We don't need those people. They don't need to exist. There is no sort of natural state where there are individuals who have that much more power in society than other people, except for basically kings who have these large armies. All right, continue.
Okay, a day. So you could take Elon Musk's entire net worth and reduce him to poverty, which I know the left would love to do that. It would fund the government for what? 2 weeks? 2 weeks. So the billionaires don't matter. They don't really matter when it comes to it's marginal. They're spending so much money, and there are so few billionaires that it's a drop in the bucket. These taxes on the rich are mostly screwing over people who are not billionaires. In fact, a huge number of these people are not even millionaires. Okay, again, the tax rate, you're talking about $600,000 for a single individual. These are not so these aren't even millionaires. And while that's happening, these idiot liberals are pretending that actually somehow taxes, by some voodoo magic, public school teachers are paying more in taxes than people who have to fork over 40% of their income to the federal government. And we went over this already, but higher income people By that, I mean, and the IRS means, more importantly, people who make 600K or more, not billionaires, not even close to billionaires.
Oh my God, pause it for a second.
Higher income people.
Yeah, like, yes, I get, like we could literally see, we now know how much Matt Walsh is making. It's over $600,000 and he's bemoaning and he's got to pay taxes. This is so oppressive to him. We are really getting, what is the percentage of people who make over 600,000 in this country? I mean, if the idea that there's only 750 billionaires, the percentage of people making over 600,000, let's see if you can look that up.
It's not the top 1%, but it's definitely the top 5%.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, we're talking about a tiny percentage of the country who are really just taking it on the chin. Go ahead.
Yeah.
By that, I mean, and the IRS means, more importantly, people who make 600K or more, not billionaires, not even close to billionaires. Higher income people pay for almost everything. They get the worst deal by a long shot. They get screwed the most by our current tax system, and it's not even close. Okay? I know it's not a popular thing. It's not very populist to say that, oh, you know, boo-hoo, someone who makes 600K is getting robbed by the government. But yeah, you know what? Yeah, boo-hoo. It's a bad thing. Boo-hoo. It is a bad thing. It's actually outrageous.
No, it's not.
No,
The
it's not.
government
You
is
gotta
just
give us
straight up
hold on.
stealing nearly half of the...
Incidentally, the tax rate is lower for those people who are married. I should say, like, that's $600,000 per individual. $600,000 per individual.
This is the entire game. This is the existence of Daily Wire is underwritten by billionaires and millionaires who want to be taxed less. But if we want to move on, people might remember this. This is the guy, Asher Edelman, who was one of the inspirations for Gordon Gekko in the movie Wall Street. And this is him in 2016 when they invited him on MSNBC and he surprised people by endorsing Bernie Sanders. His explanation for what happens when you redistribute money in economy and why you should want a Bernie Sanders style policy is, I think, pretty easy to understand, much more easier than what Walsh just gave us.
Why is that? What
No question.
policies?
Well, I think it's quite simple again. If you look at something called velocity of money, you guys know what that is, I presume.
Mm-hmm.
That means how much gets spent and turns around. When you have the top 1% getting money, they spend 5-10% of what they earn. When you have the lower end of the economy getting money, they spend 100 or 110% of what they earn. As you've had a transfer of wealth to the top and a transfer of income to the top, you have a shrinking consumer base, basically, and you have a shrinking velocity of money. Mm-hmm. Bernie is the only person out there who I think is talking at all about both fiscal stimulation and banking rules that will get the banks to begin to generate lending again as opposed to speculation.
Okay.
So
Asher,
from an economic point of view, it's
and
straightforward.
this is, you know, we talk about this when we say things like a rich man only buys one loaf of bread a day. They are hoarding money. And not only do we see this in the context of if you give, there's 80% of Americans out there that if you give them a tax break or you give them a raise or you give them a stimulus check or you give them a child tax credit, that money is going to go out the door and it's going to go into somebody else's pocket and they're going to put it into somebody else's pocket. And that's what he's talking about with the velocity of money. We also see this dynamic in the context of Social Security. That's why we have a system that was designed to touch on 91%, to tax 91% of the income that sloshes around in our economy. But because you have people hoarding money,
Right.
these ultra rich, even these even more rich, that money is not touched. It's out of the system, essentially. It's just sitting in some investment situation. It's just paying capital gains. It's not being implicated by wage taxes. this is the bottom line. But that concept of velocity of money, I mean, you're talking about from an economic perspective. Again, we get back to all governments redistribute wealth. The question is to whom is going to have that wealth? Is it going to go to a small group of people, 0.01% of the population, 0.2% of the population, 2% of the population, 5% of the population, 10% of the population? Or is it going to go to 80% of the population? Is it going to be spread out more evenly? And when it's spread out more evenly, it is far more likely to be spent. And like this guy says, it expands the consumer base, which is what our economy is based upon.
Right. And when Matt Walsh talks about, there's only 700 billionaires in America, like, it's not like we're talking about some, I don't know, really small minority of people who get outsized attention from right-wing media. In fact, some people make whole documentaries about a really, really small percentage of the population to try to demonize them. And that group of people doesn't have any power whatsoever. The 700, I'm talking about trans people, by the way.
Right.
The 700 billionaires that he's referring to, you know why that's a focus of the left or anybody that wants a society that's more fair? Because of the insane amount of power that they have.
Yeah.
That's the difference between, well, exactly, from the money. But that's the difference between right-wing politics about this kind of thing and left-wing politics, is because they're going after a fraction of the country that has no power. And when people talk about taxing billionaires, that's about going after the powerful to change our society for the better.
This is you can look at policy like student loan debt, which we have to talk about in morals from a moral perspective. But economically, those payments going to bankers like Mohila and stuff, or they could be going into your local community to help maybe a contractor build up your kitchen or something like that. But instead, we're just leeching all this money through policy to bankers. It's people should think about things this way.
We should say that I think it was in 2016, maybe it was a little bit later, the chairman of the Home Builders Association of America said the number one thing that was inhibiting new home building was student debt. That was almost 10 years ago. It's only gotten worse. All right, let's just listen to Matt Walsh, essentially, I don't know, grease the wheels for his patrons to give more money.
Someone who makes $600K is getting robbed by the government. But yeah, you know what? Yeah, boo-hoo. It's a bad thing. It is a bad thing. It's actually outrageous.
No, it's not.
The government is just straight up stealing nearly half of the income of millions of American families.
Not stealing.
Millions of American workers who have worked extremely hard to get to where they are, and they have families to take care of, only to get ruthlessly punished for it.
You're punished.
So yeah, they are the victims of the tax system. Okay, I mean, they just are.
Victims.
People who make 40, 50, 60K, the average American income, they do pretty well when it comes to federal income taxes. They're getting screwed in a bunch of other ways. Everybody is. Every American is getting screwed by the system because we have an incompetent, corrupt, wasteful government and federal bureaucracy that screws everybody over. No question about it. But so we're all getting a raw deal. But my point is, when it comes to the federal income tax system specifically,
when it comes to a very specific
higher income people have by far the most to complain about.
In terms of my neurological capacity.
I mean, it's just such an absurd argument because, yes, within the, and I would not use the word complain, I would use whine. Within, if you're looking specifically at the top federal marginal income tax rates, then people who are making the most amount of money can whine about it the most. But if you look at every other metric within society, the cost of healthcare, the cost of education, the lack of access in some instances to healthcare or to a high quality education, the implications, the percentage that rent takes from all those people who are not making that money, the size of the percentage, like the percentages of just survival, the cost of just survival is so much higher for people who make less than $600,000. I'm only using that figure because he does, that less than $600,000 than over $600,000. That's just the reality of it. And he could say, oh, well, but that's the private market. No. That is how we decide to set up society. There is no law that says that medicine needs to be commodified. Well, I guess there is actually a law, but it's one that we could change. It's certainly one that we could change. We could add new laws that say we're going to decommodify healthcare. We're going to decommodify housing. We're going to decommodify the cost of childcare. We're going to decommodify the cost of home health care. We're going to decommodify nursing homes. I mean, these are all things that we could do. It's just a question of the choices that we make as a society. That's it. These are all things that can be done. We cut child poverty nearly in half over the course of a 12-month period. That is proof positive that we could do all these things that we're talking about. Yep. We just choose not to. And in some instances, folks like Matt Walsh will cry about it and say that it's unfair. And then in other instances, it's just like, it's not possible to do. How you pay for this? You can pay for it. We've done it. We got rid of child poverty by nearly half in 12 months. It's absurd that we even can have these arguments with a straight face is what we're capable of doing. But for Matt Walsh, instead of whining about that, how come we didn't continue to do that? He's whining like people are making over $600,000, really taking it on the chin in terms of federal income taxes.
Yep.
I'm crying for them.
All right, folks. We done?
I guess Matt Walsh doesn't want George Soros to be taxed. That's kind of suspicious.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.